We continue to follow breaking news of the trial of Officer Caesar Goodson, where he was just acquitted on 7 charges.
He is one of 6 officers charged in connection with the arrest and death of Freddie Gray.
He has been found not guilty on all charges, including second-degree depraved heart murder, involuntary manslaughter, gross negligence, vehicular manslaughter charge as well, criminal negligence, vehicular manslaughter, and second-degree assault charge.
Also, reckless endangerment and misconduct in office. And WJZ has a team of reporters live covering every angle of this high-profile case. WJZ investigator Mike Helgren was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Rick Ritter with what's at stake in this case. Mike Shue with protesters outside the courthouse. Jessica Cartalia with expert analysis of today's verdict. And Marcus Washington in West Baltimore with community reaction.
We began with Mike Helgren and Rick Ritter live outside Courthouse East. Guys?
Vic, Mary, good afternoon. Mike, we just had a small group of protesters who passed us over here. That's the scene that we've been looking at this morning. Very small groups of protesters here outside the courthouse, a very heavy police presence with both Baltimore City officers and Baltimore City Sheriff's officers, as you can see walking behind us right now. Mike Helgren was obviously inside the overflow room up there in the courthouse. Mike, you were there when Officer Caesar Goodson was found not guilty on all charges. First and foremost, what was it like up there?
There was an emotional reaction in the main courtroom, people giving Officer Goodson congratulations. His family was there along with the Fraternal Order of Police. You're looking live right now from Sky Chopper 13 at some protesters. It has been largely peaceful here outside the courthouse. However, some people are demonstrating the full acquittal here. The judge had a very reasoned decision. He spoke for about 40 minutes. He said the evidence simply was not there of the prosecution's centerpiece theory, he called it, of a rough ride. He said that was an inflammatory term not to be taken lightly, and he didn't believe prosecutors proved that. He also questioned how the average person, including Officer Goodson, would have known that Freddie Gray was injured before stop 6 when he was found unconscious in the van at the Western District. And he said that the medic was called right after that, so he did not believe this rose to the level of criminal negligence and certainly not murder. We've been gathering reaction all morning. Here is a look at what some legal analysts and lawmakers and the NAACP are saying about the decision.
I don't think it was a huge shock. At the end of the day, it's important for people to recognize that this was not a question in the legal sense about whether or not Officer Goodson was unreasonable. The critical question in the case ultimately came down to what was he aware of? Did he know the danger that he was placing Mr. Gray in? It is in no way an endorsement of Officer Goodson's actions that he was acquitted today. It doesn't mean an egregious thing wasn't done. It doesn't mean that policies weren't broken. It doesn't mean, frankly, that massive reforms don't need to be made, but it just means it was not a crime.
Keep in mind, when the murder charges were brought against Officer Goodson, they said Officer Goodson murdered Freddie Gray. Now that's a pretty dastardly accusation, and the evidence just wasn't there. There was an embellishment all along the way in terms of these charges that the state brought against Officer Goodson and quite frankly against the other officers.
The officers were arrested, and that was one of the major hurdles that had ever happened in Baltimore or Maryland history. Police officers generally do not get arrested for these kinds of cases. So they were all arrested. Now they've had their day in court. That's part of what our criminal justice system is. That's what justice means. Somebody commits a crime or an offense you think this should be a crime, they get arrested, they go to court, and an impartial judge or impartial jury comes up with a decision based upon the evidence. And in this case, the judge said this is not enough to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
I'm upset because when you work close to the families of the victims, you get emotional and you want justice for the deceased, you want justice for the family. Everybody in Baltimore that lives in certain neighborhoods know exactly the definition of what a rough ride is. You can't prove it in court as we see, but a lot of people that are standing out here, advocates and other people and family members know what a rough ride is because we have victims that come to our office and come to the NAACP and all over the city that have had rough rides, had bruises. A lot of them don't die. But in this case, Freddie Gray is dead and no one will pay for it, and he's dead. He's in the cemetery and his family want justice.
a sampling of reaction from the community. Remember, this judge used to be a Department of Justice prosecutor who handled police misconduct cases, and the Freddie Gray family attorney, Billy Murphy, has in the past praised him. He looked very much at the law in this and whether the standard rose to criminal negligence, rose to murder. Again, he did not find that, but there still is an administrative review by the city police department. That will be complete once all these trials are over. And at this point, you have to ask yourself whether there will be any more trials. If they can't get a conviction for the van driver, can they get a conviction for anyone else?
And that's the million-dollar question right there. What's going to happen going forward? Obviously, we've been talking to legal experts about that. And then you mentioned Billy Murphy, too, the attorney for Freddie Gray's family. We have not seen Billy yet, which is kind of surprising. We've seen him at the other two verdicts when they came down. Have not yet seen him today. Ron did not see him in the courtroom. You didn't see him upstairs. Again, just to touch on these charges, second-degree depraved heart murder, Mike, 3 manslaughter counts, second-degree assault, reckless endangerment, misconduct in office. Officer Caesar Goodson found not guilty on all charges.
And it's certainly a victory for the police officers involved. The Fraternal Order of Police will be holding a press conference at 2 o'clock. Reporting live at Courthouse East, Mike Helgren and Rick Ritter. Back to you on TV Hill.
Mike and Rick, thank you.
And now back to Courthouse East. Mike Shue with protesters that have gathered there. Mike, we saw some of them leaving that area.
Oh, indeed, by far. I mean, this area is nearly back to normal. There's a slightly heavier group of sheriff's deputies here, but this is the crowd that we normally see on any Thursday. But I want to show you this whole sidewalk and part of the roadway were closed down because there were so many members of the media and protesters and legal analysts and people who were just down here who wanted to see what was going on. But we're looking now at the main area that should be for protesters, and as you see, there are no protesters here. A couple of them still around the corner. Before they left, we were able to talk to Reverend Courtney Witherspoon about his reaction to what happened.
The way that this community feels, I'm sure it's the same way that the community felt when Emmett Till was killed in 1955, the same way that they feel when Medgar Evers was murdered, the same way that they felt when the LAPD severely beat Rodney King. We feel that justice was not done in this particular case, and in a sense, we know that this particular trial was of major importance because this particular officer carried the most extensive charges. Up to this point, we have not seen any justice, and today, the criminal justice system and these officers evaded justice.
So back now live, you're looking at a view from Chopper 13 where you can see that there's a knot of people there on the corner. Some of them protesters, some of them media, some people just hanging out, see what is going on down here. There were only about 25 protesters or so in total here, and half of them were from New York, from the American Communist Party. They came in as a group and stood in front of the local protesters and chanted for a while. What was interesting here is in the last 2 trials as they've ended, the protests have been immediate and vehement against it. This one, everybody was sort of stunned for a while, almost as if they didn't know exactly what to do, and then everybody started to crank up and get upset about how this all went down. I can tell you that the parts of the city administration, of course police, were worried that this city might become unhinged if all 6 of these came back as not guilty, and indeed that has happened, and we have not seen that at all. So I'm Mike Shue, WJZ Eyewitness News, reporting live at the courthouse. Back to you on TV Hill.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much.
All right, let's go to Marcus Washington at Penn and North in West Baltimore with some more community reaction. Marcus?
That's right, Mary. You know, a lot of people here are talking about the verdict today. This, I guess you could say, has been a hub where people have come to express their emotions. As far as everything around here, it's been very calm out here. But they do have a few officers you can see right here at the corner. As we pan over there, you can see some of the officers that are standing here, but it has been a very calm thing as well. A lot of people just expressing their emotion. Now, we talked to Fleetwood Hall, who right after that verdict was read, and we told him what it was. Listen to what he had to say.
I was disappointed. I was really disappointed. But then I had expectations that this is the way it was going to turn out. Because I thought that the charges were, it required too much more evidence than they had. But the only thing that I say about this whole thing is the fact that it's not going to be business as usual. I think that police around the nation understand that, you know, you have to do something about a person's rights even when they're, you know, in your custody and everything. So this came out of this. There's nothing else came out of this. I think there's a renewed acknowledgement that these things do concern us.
And there you have it, Mr. Hall there. His sentiments are that of a lot of people here in the Penn North community. Also, a lot of people saying this shows that we have to stand together. That is something that a lot of people are holding on to and spreading as this verdict has been read. Reporting live from Penn North, I'm Marcus Washington. Back to you.
Marcus, thank you.
And our complete coverage continues now with Jessica Kataria. She's breaking down the impact of this high-stakes verdict and the questions it will answer. Jessica, live from outside City Hall. Jessica.
Yeah, Vic, joining me now, Adam Ruther. And Adam, we were saying a very emotionally charged reaction to this verdict today. But from a legal perspective, what are your thoughts?
From a legal perspective, Judge Williams did what Judge Williams was supposed to do. Take the evidence adduced at that trial, match it up with the law and the elements of the offenses, and decide whether he was convinced to that very high degree of beyond a reasonable doubt whether the state had proven its case against Officer Goodson to that level. And the thing that people need to remember is obviously they may be emotional about the outcome, but the legal system is designed to do as much justice in as many cases as possible. The old adage is it's better that 100 guilty go free than one innocent be put to jail. And that's exactly the idea of the very high standard that the state needs to prove and putting the burden on the state. Innocent until proven guilty is the way that Officer Goodson went into that courtroom. And if Judge Williams wasn't convinced, then by definition, not guilty is the right verdict. And that is the way the system is supposed to operate.
Okay, thank you so much, Adam Ruther. We're live at City Hall, and Jessica Cartalia, back to you on TV Hill.
Okay, Jessica, thank you very much.
Complete coverage continues now with Lynn Bowie in the newsroom with the impact of this case on policing here and across the country. Lynn?
Vic, Mary, I'm with Rob Weinhold, a public safety expert. The police department has already made changes, body cameras, new police vans. What other ramifications could we see because of this case?
Well, I think training never stops. So you're always going to look at best practices across the country. And again, the most important issue here is officer safety and the safety of the citizens they serve. So they'll continue to use technology, make sure they have the right resources, the right training, the proper supervision, and they're ultimately able to go out and perform their job effectively. Look, when you take someone's freedom, it's often not pretty, but they have to make sure that they are law-abiding in their efforts, and many men and women are very, very law-abiding when they go out and they execute their duties. But in this day and age, the game of law enforcement has changed, so to speak, because of the iPhone and the mobile devices, and they have to learn to operate on camera. And as I say, I think the city's done a good job of coming together. I think the commissioner's done a good job. The first order of leadership is to provide a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. And everyone needs to remember that policing is a relational profession, not a transactional profession.
Rob, thank you, and always evolving. Thank you so much.
Always evolving, that's correct.
Vic, Mary, back to you guys.
All right, thank you both. And here's what you need to know about the trial for Officer Caesar Goodson. He has been acquitted on all 7 charges in the arrest and death of Freddie Gray.
Prosecutors failed to prove he gave Gray a rough ride, leading to his neck injury that he later died of. Former officers were to stand trial in the death of Freddie Gray.
And there is no word on what this verdict means for them. Again, Caesar Goodson acquitted on all charges.
Stay with WJZ for complete coverage of the Officer Caesar Goodson verdict. We'll have updates on air and online throughout the day.